a very productive first session. I think we did. And I'm looking forward to more discussions this afternoon. First of all, my name is Tomohiro Harada, and I think I've spoken to many of you. I'm an external relations at Y7 in Japan, 2016. And today, in this session, we have a very special guest. His name is Yoshiteru Uramoto, and he's the regional director of the International Labor Organization. Was. He's a former. My apologies. And a distinguished professor at Sophia University. So he also worked at the Embassy of Japan in Ghana, and then he was in charge of providing aid in the field of information, public relations, and technology. In 1978, he started working at UNICEF as an international civil servant. In 2006, he became the deputy to the Director General at UNIDO. In 2012, he was appointed as Director General and Regional Director for Asia and the Pacific for the International Labor Organization. And as I said before, he is a distinguished professor at Sophia University in Tokyo. So please, Mr. Uramoto.
Check microphones. Can you hear me? Good, good. Good afternoon. First of all, let me thank the Secretariat of Y7 Summit for giving opportunity to me. Out of 3 subjects they offered me, I took sustainable development. And what I'd like to talk today is 4 folds. One is a story of Myanmar, where I spent some years way back, 35 years ago. And followed by SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, and the private sector. Followed by transnational cooperation, or multinational cooperation, and trade and inequality. And the last is advancement of technology in the manufacturing and jobs. And I'd like to conclude. It will be about 20 minutes. I have just returned from, can you hear me well? Okay. I just returned from Myanmar 3 days ago. And let me begin with the story of Myanmar. Some 35 years ago, I met a person called Wu Mien Man, a Burmese gentleman of 30s who had completed his master's of social science in the US and married to 2. Upon returning from the US, he started to work with UNICEF, where I met. And one day, Umeman and I set up for boat cruise, wonderful to Paseng. It's located right in the Irrawaddy Delta. In the evening, after sailing through the whole day, the Delta Basin, the sun was setting in the waters of Irrawaddy. Burmese sunset is just absolutely stunning. And they have this beautiful panorama of colors in the sky. He then somewhat started to share his thoughts of his own country and his compatriot. He obviously has given much thought to the poverty and delays in Myanmar's modernization, which was something he could not put up with. Poverty, mercilessly, really, unravels in inadequacies, backwardness, and has very long been a bitter humiliation to him. It makes the poverty, makes you a subject of disease, ignorance, malnutrition, poor infrastructure, and a lot of inconveniences. You have to go through it really to really appreciate it. The impact could have been much less to Myanmar if he hasn't seen an affluent American life which he has left behind a few months ago. The stark differences are overwhelming and ingrained in his mind and heart. More he loved the country, more frustrated he was. This year, though Aung San Suu Kyi and her National League of Democracy won the majority in national election and gained power. She is determined to lead Myanmar into a road to democracy and prosperity. People started to enjoy the freedom and see a light on the other side of a very, very long tunnel. People also say why it took 50 years since the military coup d'etat in 1962. Who should pay them back for the lost years and lost opportunities? Will Myanmar become a developed nation that U Min Maung dreamed of? Was a failure and delays caused by factors inherent in the nation, its people, culture, value system, or were they external factors? U Min Maung did not witness the change but volunteered to serve in the south of Sudan some 30 years ago, and he never returned home. U Min Maung, a sad story, but he would have hoped that next 50 years, Myanmar is bright, as well as all aspire for a nation with economic growth, safe environment, political unity and happiness. However, currently, 37% of Myanmar's population is unemployed. An average of 27% live in poverty. Ladies and gentlemen, will SDG help Myanmar move out of this impasse? The Sustainable Development Goal, SDG, represent our global public goods. Public goods that are of global significance. No universal accepted definition of global public goods exists at the moment, but broadly two types can be identified. First, some global public goods consist of global rules, governance, regulations that drive international cooperation and economic exchange. Such rules include COP21, or the Paris Agreement of 2016, international rules and regulations, guidelines for improving regulations and transparency to reduce, say, illicit financial flows on preventing tax evasion. You will recall Panama Papers and tax having, and I understand 400 Japanese on the list as well, but today's newspaper. A universal application of human rights and human labor, international labor standards for fair level playing field, and also trade rules and regulations such as NAFTA, TPP, and other WTO rules and regional trade and partnership agreements. Second, such rules are crucial for achievement of the SDG, but they do not constitute significant investment areas in themselves. Several global public goods require direct investment in improving health, quality of education, building infrastructure, project for industrialization, etc. and etc. However, it is not possible without adequate resources. Where are the money? SDG has 17 goals, as you know, and requires $7 trillion every year to achieve them. One of a report which World Bank has published recently is from billions to trillions. So we're not talking about billions any longer, we're talking about trillions. Well, this is what requires $7 trillion every year And it's ODA, what do we have now? ODA, including one from OECD countries, some of your country, and South-South contributions, and including multinational development banks like World Bank, Asia Development Bank, European Bank, Reconstruction, and IMF amounts to $150 billion. 3% of the annual requirement of the resources required for SDG annually. Who would pay remaining 93%? Big question. The world GDP is $78 trillion. For comparison purposes, I give you the GDP of Japan, 4.6 trillion US dollars, 5.9% of the world GDP. Now, SDG requires 7 trillion US dollars, or 9% of the world GDP. Well, if you want to change the rule, we have agreed, or we would make a rule and impose 9% contribution from all nations. But we know, we recall, with a modest result, with amongst the, we had MDG, 0.7% of GDP contribution from every nation. And some worked, some didn't. And I would say my honest assessment is, for some Nordic country, did well. But generally speaking, we're lagging far behind. And this is 0.7%, and the requirement wasn't that great. We're talking about far below $100 billion. Now we are talking about $7 trillion per year. And against this background, there's a high expectation we have from the private sector. Okay? Some would argue that private sector would do nothing but for profit, and often do business that is exploitative in nature of developing countries and their people. Actually, the private sector do contribute to SDG. First and foremost, they create jobs, pay wages, and meet various human needs. You go to a restaurant, food store, and buy nutritious food. That obviously will help alleviate malnutrition. Just imagine, private funded infrastructure project, say constructing the road from Vietnam to Myanmar. There are three major pathways to accelerate the development in East Asia. How many jobs will that create and serve SDG 8 aim at job creation? How much workers get as wages? How much of such wage earning would be spent for improvement in health and contribute to SDG Goal 3? How much contribution would it make to SDG Goal 4, quality of education? Similar, indirect contribution to SDG Goal 1, poverty, 2, reducing hunger, and 3, clean water and sanitation. Private sector contribution are somewhat misunderstood. They are not calculated in when they try to assess the contribution to the to SDG. It's true contribution. It needs to be assessed properly. If there are projects, if Pricewaterhouse or McKinsey or Deloitte would like to proceed and get one project done and see, hey, private sector has done $1 trillion contribution. How many of that project exists throughout the world? I wouldn't say that is small in quantity and in quality of contribution to SDG. What is important is what contribution, it sounds like a Kennedy, no, what contribution can business make to SDG? And not what SDG can do for business. When you talk to corporate social responsibility, CSR, usually big company will assign the CSR person in charge. And you say, well, there's a noisy people. You try to cope with it, with public services and all that. Now, that's what I mean, what term SDG can do for business. But I like to see the other way around. There is an ample opportunity business can contribute to SDG. And they are already contributing a lot. We didn't assess it, we don't know. If all such private sector project, the resource gap, as I said, would be very narrow. It is also true that we have roughly 22 trillion in global annual saving and 218 trillion of global financial asset. That's quoting UN 2014. 2.8 times the world GDP. That's global financial asset. Don't ask who owns it, what 1% own, how much of that, and that has been publicized a lot in a lot of publications. And that could be, but today, private financing directed towards sustainable development remains very insufficient, says Jeffrey Sachs. But maybe Jeffrey Sachs also doesn't understand how much private sector is contributing to GDP, directly or indirectly. Now, who consists private sector? In fact, the second half of 1980, world merchandise trade grew twice as fast as the world output in the 1990s. It grew 3 times as fast. The UNCTAD, United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, estimate that around 80% of the global trade is now linked to international production network of TNC, or multinational corporations. Since TNC serves a significant driver of the world economy, it will be difficult to talk about private sector economic growth without talking about the trade and supply chains of transnational corporations. Trade is full of rules. It's not free. Adam Smith is long gone. WTO created a lot of them. TPP is an example when it set up rules that governs the trade of 12 Pacific Rim countries. Full of rules. Now what rules? Who make that rule? Who benefits out of the rule? Who doesn't benefit out of the rule? Who's a loser? Who's a winner? As you all know, British, is that British here? Of course there are some. Oh, good. Yes. A British East India Company, established in 1600, was one of the first TNC in the world. And the East India Company made practically most of the rules that govern the trade with India, obviously. So the rulemaking of TNC started 1600. And that is quite astonishing to learn the history of transnational corporations. It doesn't happen just yesterday. Let us take a quick look at the work of the TNC. Imagine you are at a cinema hall. Let's see. Is an American here? Yes, yes. New York City, let's put New York City. And watching a popular, let's say, animated film in the theater, in cinema hall. The movie itself was made in the company in the United States. This is a similar story for iPhone. They're using subcontractors. Itself was made by company in the United States. Movie itself was made, but using subcontractors from India and Republic of Korea. Popcorn you were eating was harvested by workers in Argentina, prepared with palm oil from Malaysian plantation, produced in machine, assembled in Italy. The seat you're sitting on was made in Poland. The car you drove to the cinema was assembled in Spain with parts from Austria, France, Japan, Mexico, Thailand, and were transported on the container ship owned by a Greek national through Liberian company. Now, which was built in Japan and powered by engine made in Finland, indeed, the 2 hours you spent watching a film may have required labors of thousands of people in dozens of countries in a global supply chain. Now, well, how about your smartphone you got in your pocket? Let us look at your shirt, look at your jeans, and see where they are made. Nowadays, decentralization of production is scattered throughout the world, and you never know who product would that be. In this story, I see 2 major issues. One is smiley face. They call it smiley curve. Did you hear about smiley curve and transnational corporation, value chain? You heard about it? Yeah, so that's what we're talking about. And a yellow smiley face with wide U shape. So this is in both ends, the left end of the smile and the right end on the smile is where you have the fact is that U shape illustrates how value creation differs and amongst the different activities in the process of supply chain of a given product and services. The greatest value creation takes place at left or right end of the smiling curve, or in pre-production and post-production activities related to research and development, designing, software development, retailing, logistics and services, while assembling and production have a lower share of value added, right in the middle. So right on the left and right, high value, and the middle. Now, what is interesting, we mustn't end with here. China being called world factory, and high value addition in global supply chains of electrical product, for example. Bangladesh, Vietnam follows suit in global supply chain of a trade ready-made garments, and they're not involved in the high value activities or pre-production, post-production activities will China, Bangladesh, and Vietnam, and other developing countries like being able to move higher value activities? The answer is very difficult. Sometimes it is almost impossible. They were great in catching up. They have gained in the value chain, but moving up the value chain is awfully difficult task to do. In reality, gap is widening. In 1970, supply chains was smiling curve, was far flatter. 1970. That means the gap between the high value added activities and lower value added activities wasn't there much differences. But in 21st century, that is deepened. The smile is deepened. That means the gap between the high value added activities and low value added activities, which is production, assembly, widening gap has been observed. This is worrying. Gap is in value addition between the 2 ends is widening. And developing countries are happy because they got jobs, millions of jobs. For example, Bangladesh ready-made garments created 4 million jobs, $25 billion, 10% of the GDP, and 80% of the... Sorry, I wouldn't even look who is calling me. That's my brother. Okay, sorry, my brother. I can't put it off. There, I put it off. So it's the gap between the high value addition activities and low value additions is increasing, and this phenomena is called as bottom race to the bottom. There's so much factories already making garment in factories in Bangladesh. If the H&M or Gap or Walmart goes there and one factory rejects the production of it, and they say, oh, right, fine, there are guy who produces 50 cents, you ask for 60 cents, and they say, all right, fine, but there are so many workers and so many factories, and there is a great amount of unemployment in those countries, so that's where economy works. Now, would labor-intensive supply chains, my question, sustainable this way? Today, technological progress is happening at unprecedented rate. Jobs thought to be outside of the realm of the machine are now being automated as of yet the impact of employment skills required in a sector vulnerable to automation is yet to unknown. Some rule that labor share should depend on productivity. Labor productivity can be higher with additional capital, technological advancement, knowledge and skills, which might end up in less labor. Each may end up unemployment. And some of the ready-made garment industry, which has been outsourced to countries outside, for example, US, some of them are returning because they are not, if automated machine technology can drive a car, when IA drive a car, would IA be able to cut and sew suit? Well, I'm sure they're already doing it, and I think it's a matter of time. Higher productivity could serve more labor, could severe more labor, you say, and lead to higher unemployment. I can quote another gentleman, is a senior lecturer at the University of Pennsylvania, Jeremy Rifkin's. I don't know if you've heard of it, Jeremy Rifkin's. And in his report, he said the third industrial revolution, in the period between 1995-2002, more than 31 million jobs disappeared in 20 large economies, while productivity rose by 43%, and global industrial production increased by 30%. China estimated 15 million factory jobs during the same period, eliminated 15 million jobs in China. Right? Would this trend continue global manufacturing employment, and which may decline much further? Now, I'm ready for conclusion. Finally, would technological advancement and automation end the labor-intensive manufacturing, making tens of million workers jobless? We also need to be aware that we have to create 600 million jobs for the next 10 years, including 200 million already employed in this world, and 1 out of 4 are young people, like yourself, and annually 400 million new entrants to the labor market each year. That's ILO 2016. The world GDP may keep increasing, but if we cannot create jobs, the world would be full of unemployed people and youth. Unemployed people, together with the people without decent job, suffering from poverty, consists over 45% of the world workforce. The hungry and poor, when they see an uncertain future, would not be comfortable and may get angry at the world we live in. My conclusion is, would women man of Myanmar be happy with this? Is this what he wanted to see in Myanmar in 50 years down the road? Could SDG make difference and help us to grow and create jobs? And this is the reason why Price Waterhouse, quite recently, in their report, ranked SDG 8, job creation, as a top priority SDG. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Uramoto. I think we'll have 10 minutes of Q&A if the time allows. Does anyone have any questions so far? Okay. I think you can just mention your name and where you're from.
Sure. Hi. Thank you very much for a very wonderful discussion. I found it very interesting. So our room for sustainable development just had a conversation in gender equality. And one of the areas that we brought up, I'm from the United States, one of the areas that I'm very interested in is about the GDP and our valuation system of the GDP. We would like to see or suggest valuing unpaid labor into the GDP and what it would cost, or what would the system of valuation look like if unpaid labor was actually contributed. Taking care of elders, driving your children to school, contributing to society in ways that could be measured if it was given a valuation. And what would that do to the system that you are describing in the future, particularly as it pertains to the sustainable development goals?
I'll pick up maybe two more.
Yep. Please.
Thank you very much for informative speech. My name is Sophia University. I'm from Japan, so I wish I could talk with you in Japanese, but that didn't happen, I guess. My question is about the last topic you have mentioned, technology and labor. And I understand that ILO has an initiative called Future of Work Initiative, where you research on the future and employment. My question is that are those initiatives directly connected to policies of governments within countries? Because many countries are considering, in education, maybe making coding mandatory on education, but many countries understand that technology improvement brings higher unemployment, but I still don't see many policies on countries' policies. So I want to ask about the research and the policy of each country regarding technology and labor.
Okay. One more.
Hi, I'm Olga. I was at EU delegation at Conference Finland, and I was visiting in the international.
You're making chair.
Sorry?
You're making chair. Are they quoted on?
Yeah, yeah. Pretty surprised, but so I'm on the EU delegation in the international security room, and what we've been discussing in the last hour was really how educational initiatives directed towards improving the civil society, prevent radicalization of youth, and effectively prevent terrorism. But what you have been saying in your great lecture is that really the inequalities in the world and the inequalities of opportunity are really hindering the chances of many people. They're hindering the chances of youth to have lifelong employment. And therefore, I just wanted to ask about any potential links to employment, GDP, annihilating the pretty high income inequalities between the countries, not necessarily within the countries, and how that would contribute to overall security without infringement on our civil liberties, really. Thank you.
Well, to be fair, with the person asked question, the first three, let me just quickly answer the three first and move on to the next three. I think the first one is the value of the unpaid people. Now, major principle is that in ILO people do discuss about it, and equal work and equal pay. Well, sometimes if it's equal work, so what is work? There are a lot of informal sector, and they are not well paid. It has to be structured. It has to be recognized. And in India, for example, over 90% are in the informal sector. Only 5–6% in the formal sector. That means, they're monitored for the rules and regulations, labor code, and labor laws, and tax, and everything that goes with it, because they are. But the rest, maybe they don't want to pay tax. I don't know, maybe this is the major reason why they don't want to be considered as a formal economy. Now, informal economy, that, for example, in many, serves in a domestic work. And only in borderline, who asked it, or you asked it, borderline is domestic workers. Before domestic workers was a daughters of relatives. They weren't paid. They sleep on the floor or sometimes in bed. They were given free food and all that. And I think as it progresses, you have to discuss. So this is all depends on us who set the rules. So someone has to make a rule. We've been discussing about it. So I think we've been discussing about it, and somebody do the assessment. But officially, the spouses For example, if my wife working is I'm not working, I'll claim my salary from my wife or from government or, you know. So the whole thing has to be structured in a way that work and eventually comes to equal work and equal pay. I don't know whether I'm answering you or not. But let me move. And technology and labor, future work, yes, and I will be discussing a lot about it. But what happened is there is one video on YouTube, you might have seen it. This is the director of research tells me, I mean, YouTube, he says that in the future there is no driver. There are no drivers, but there are transport managers. So you will see, you know, maybe a transport manager look after 10 cars with IA, and it's go all over the place. And here he is a driver, ex-driver, former driver, who transport manager with different monitors. If it's a 10 car, 10 monitors, and then click, click, and then give instructions and ensure that he gets paid. I don't know how he's going to pay. So that is an example of the future work. But of course, I think we've been discussing a wide range of issues. But I think technological advancement and automation, it is a serious threat. But we have to see and decide which one we're going to take. We're going to take uncertainty, we're going to have more Arab Springs, or we're going to have unemployment. Who will make sure we look after that end, not just productivity ends? Inequality, unequal opportunity, this is a big problem, I think. This is just enormous problem. And nobody really understands how we're going to solve it. You know, 1% owns 50% of the wealth, and there are number of documents, Piketty, Stiglitz, Krugman, Bank Swiss, and Oxfam. They're a whole series, and I think nowadays Robert Reich was talking about it too. And then currently nobody's talking about the free market. Nobody's really talking about price should determine the distribution and all that. So all the system, it seems, notion is half gone. So that means they are trying. I don't have an answer, sorry, but I think a tax system, you know, because as you see, there are huge amount of money flowing. They are not put into productive purposes. They are not creating, you know, they are not creating GDP. They are not contributing to it. So money purchasing money, and if you see the 10 most in Oxfam report, 10 most wealthy people, and they're talking to each other, it is just incredible. It's obscene. I don't think why they have such amount of money. They don't know what to do with it, you know. So I think it is a public policy. It is us. It is all country together. Has to tackle this. Otherwise, I think, you know, collective action is what is required. But we think somebody else will do that. Will Swiss Bank will do that? IMF will do that? I doubt it. I think like yourself could put the pressure on leaders with G7 and handle this. Thank you. And if you
Yeah. Frank Rubens from Germany. You said that it is really difficult to climb up for countries in the value chain. But we have good examples like South Korea or Taiwan, which show that for a country it is really possible and in a very short amount of time. Wouldn't that be good case models for Bangladesh or Myanmar?
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Melanie, the Sustainable Development Delegate for the EU. I think it's really, thank you for your lecture. I thought it was very interesting, the idea of the contribution of the private sector to the Sustainable Development Goals. I think we also have to consider the non-contribution of the private sector to the Sustainable Development Goals. The negative externalities of maybe not all, but a significant number of private companies also needs to be taken into consideration. And I think that it's not just about creating jobs, it's about creating sustainable jobs. So related to the comment that Francis made about creating different value chains, I think valuing different things that don't necessarily contribute to this economy, maybe more service-related or care-related or home-related. It might be a way of solving job creation and also the assault that we're currently having on our environment.
Yeah, Sebastian from French delegation. I have one question. Here we are talking about valuation and money. Is that the problem, the creation of money? Because if people have those amounts of money and that stand like that, why can't we think about new ways of producing money or creating money? For example, money that, I don't know how to say it in English, but that's melt. Yeah, melting money. It exists. And my question is the following. Can we think about local programs of creation of money and local economies? Because I'm really fond of universal solutions, but here I think maybe local solutions of sharing economy, creating democratics and local money is maybe a solution of that inequality to break, in fact, the value between the people who have a lot. If now we create a local valuation system, then people can have a lot of money, don't care, because people who are in a local scale can be united.
Thank you. Hello, thank you very much for your very interesting lecture. I'm Alexia from Italy, for the European Union. And I just have a question or comment on, we've been talking about DFB and unemployment. So, we're living in a world where we have global capital markets. There is capital moves freely between countries and boundaries. We have a global value chain. We have, raw, intermediate, final products and goods that move between countries. So I'm just wondering about the importance or the meaning of labor movement, right? About migration in this context.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, let me stop that so that you do attention to the question which has already been raised. The difficulty of moving up the value chain. Well, I have seen in reality how it is working. It's outsourcing. It's not investment. So, for example, trading company, they don't make anything. They just trade. Volkswagen or Mercedes, they make. Okay. Some people, some companies never make anything. They just trade. So I think there's abundance of suppliers, buyers, few buyers, and buyers too strong. Just like British, British East India Company, very strong. They can make rules. There is the exception. Well, Japan started, Korea, China, Taiwan, Singapore, Hong Kong. They managed to, in the other way, get out of mid-income trap, people say. And I think many are actually struggling to move up the ladders of the value chain because of the skewed investment in value creation and productivity. It's not well. If you look at some of the Marxist theory, it has some, Well, he's not entirely correct, but some portion is correct. It's if you don't have money, you can't invest in special fabrics, or you can't invest in special design. Technological advancement in Bangladesh will take much longer. While you're making it, there are further advancements taking place in the US and Europe and other places. I know I was in Cameroon. Not Cameroon. Yes, I was in Cameroon, and they were processing wood industry, They've done a lot of investment to keep it up with the world technology development. And they did a plywood, nice thin plywood, with investment, with special energy-saving measures and all that. And then after a couple of years, the buyers, that is Chinese and Vietnamese, they came, said, hey, Cameroon counterpart, you are great, you are doing a good job, but I want to buy more wood, not plywood. Well, they wanted to add that values instead of selling wood. They want to buy plywood. And they said, I can make plywood quicker and cheaper. Your technological advancement became obsolete and too late. So whole investment he made, trying to climb up the value chain, was impossible. So there are some successful cases. For example, China, they said joint venture is not outsourcing. If you joint venture, you share everything. You share the wealth, you share the technology, and you become part of it. So it is almost like joint venture is a bit like a semi-acquisition of a merger, in a sense, because you inherit the technology and know-hows. Negative externalities, yes, well, it's not really a question. You are telling me, and I do accept. There's a lot of externalities, and what do you do? And this is the power. And then we are saying, before it is within the country, if you're in the country, they can do all sorts of things. But it is a transnational. The governance of a transnational company is very difficult to govern. And in CSR, okay, CSR is not the rules, and it's not the law. So who will punish? That's the. I have seen more externality than contribution, because for a long time, TNC, from legal point of view and economic point of view, there are a lot of problems. It is disadvantages and advantages, but they have driven the economy. That's how do you balance it? Created jobs. So how do you balance it? Local economy, local solution. Yes, I think is a good idea for those people who can run the local economy. But for some people who cannot run the local economy, there are 1 billion people in the world, or 50% of the world population. They can't have a local subsistence economy. Subsistence economy is small, closed. You do everything yourself. And that, you hear the internet, you see this, and they say, I don't want to stay in this, my subsistence economy. I like to go to Europe. And how does it cost? 2,000 euro? And cross the, go to Sicily? All right, let me try that. And that, I think, is going to be the consequence. Some rich Italian local community with nice wine from Alba, truffles, and all that. I am sure you will have the local economy, and you bring a lot of money coming in because customers are there. But other community, they have nothing to sell unless they get into the value chain and move up. They have access to market. What was the last one? Is a labor migration. 230 million people are moving around the world now. The definition of migrants is that somebody who stayed more than 1 year. There are 230 million people, more than 1 year. Now, labor migration is a big problem. Labor migration for some professionals is okay. You probably belong in the future. You may migrate from country to other countries, but you are professional migrants. And there you are documented, you have a passport, you have all the documents. But they are what so-called undocumented migration. And their situation is miserable. Of course, the country which is not growing in terms of population, there are demographic reasons, wage differences, and unemployment. If your country is full of unemployment, there's a wage differences on the other side of the border. They offer you 10 times the salary, and you are young, frustrated. What would you do? Well, if you are 23, I would cross the border and get 10 times the wages I want to do. And I don't find job. I have to join my father to till the land, and once or twice a year, harvest. And I get how much? I get food, and probably a pair of shoes, and that is not the life I want. So the migration is a big. We have to manage it. We're not managing well. You're not managing well. Europe will have a lot of problems now, but in the past you weren't managing very well. Korea ventured into migration policy. Taiwan has done it in Asia. Hong Kong is in Singapore doing. But Singapore doing it in a very, very interesting way. very structured. And eventually, if you have migration, people will stay and wants to have a permanent residency. Japan has just changed. If you're professionals, they could stay 3 years and you get a permanent residence in Japan. But now they reduced to 1 year. But for undocumented, unskilled labor, like a construction towards Olympic Games, that is still internship. And that ILO is not really recognizing that's the best way to, hire people as intern and pay less and not recognize. And that's not good. That's what. Am I allowed to get another 2, 3?
I think we will have 2 more questions from David and one of our colleagues.
Hello. Oh gosh, I'm falling right now. Thank you. Thank you so much for your speech to us. So I'm really interested in picking up on 2 points actually. First of all, is we've talked about poverty, and second is about the role of business in addressing poverty. So we've talked a lot here about poverty in terms of income-related poverty as a lack of money. The UK government has actually just removed income-related measures of poverty from its legislation, and instead it focuses on the root causes of poverty, because it says that being poor isn't just about not having enough money, it's about not having enough opportunities in life. And I suppose this is where I want to bring it on to the second point, is actually, under these circumstances, can we start changing the conditions and saying that we need to stop kind of complaining about business making money and actually stop it apologising for the wealth that it's creating and actually start holding it to account for the opportunities that it's creating?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to address root causes of poverty, because if you are superficially hungry, let me just share my thinking. Millennium Development Goals has alleviated, moved. Poverty is halved during the past 15 years under the Millennium Development Goals. And I think this is the middle. I would say it's not poverty reduction, this is a poverty management. Why? Because what difference does it make if you're gaining $1.50 a day and you get $2 and you are moved out of the poverty? I think you've got to have root causes, you have to have money to raise your kid, housing, a little bit of saving to send the kids to school, look after some events in case of you get sick, you have money to look after yourself. And this, some notion of living wages is talking about, living wages, definition is not that clear, is minimum wages plus a money resources to have the means to, to see your future into that. So I think, and yes, I mean, people complain about businesses, okay? And that is starting from 1600, as you can see. They complain, and there are some winners and losers, and some doesn't complain. But I think this is the time that business may have to think very seriously about their corporate governance, not only governance, their strategy. After all, that most of the company will say in the advertisement, I do this for the world, I do this for the poor country, I do this for clean air, and that is good business, But I think there's imagination and technology. I'm sure there is a need for clean air, there is a need for clean water, there is a need. So I'm pretty sure if there's somebody who can pay for it, we'll go to a very big business. But of course, if you provide clean air to somebody who is amongst the poor, they won't be able to pay. So I think that making business plan, incorporating some of these public goods into business plan is the way to go, I think. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, I think there was a question, and then we'll finish.
One question, which is more of a meta question, but it's about the institutions you've worked in. If you think about the ILO or the UN Industrial Development Organization or any of these bodies in the UN system that are meant to deliver on the development goals, what's the single largest problem that exists in them right now that's preventing them from delivering as effectively as they could? What's the best idea you've heard thus far for addressing that, reforming that?
You mean say, what is preventing these international organizations from doing a better job than they do now? That's what you were saying, right? Well, I will say, as you can see, Mr. Ban Ki-moon and Secretariat, and how P5 moves in the Security Council. In the Security Council, if you want to move something, if the United States doesn't move, that's it. If you want to set the agenda in the Security Council, you got to discuss with them first, you know, and see how it flies. And the United Nations is there was a moment in 1990s, early 1990s, Boutros Ghali, he is from Egypt, Coptic Christians, bright man. And he couldn't stay more than a term. And bright guys like Kofi Annan can't stay that long in the third term. Idea is that it is the individual powerful countries who rule the world and rules United Nations. So there's a limit of what United Nations can, you know. We use public forum, we use General Assembly, we use media, we use the news media and all that, try to make big countries, if they have done something wrong, make them feel uncomfortable. And that, I think, UN can do. And United Nations Development, International Industrial Development Organization, there was some long history. But most of the Anglo-Saxons is gone out of the member. America is not there, Austria is not there, and UK is not there, and now is the largest donors are Japan, Germany, and some Nordic countries. And they say that, but UN agency never sink, never disappeared, because creating one is easier than sinking it. So there are problems, but some organizations like ILO, for example, among 3 organizations I worked, UNICEF, United Nations University too, UNICEF, UNU, UNIDO, and ILO, and among many UN organizations. If you want to work in a field directly involved in refugees, HCR, IMR, IMO, International Migration Organization, and there are somebody who works in between. But ILO is a big ship. It was the first United Nations organization built in 1919 at Versailles, as closing the World War II, World War I, right? And this is a gigantic, and we had a huge complex in Geneva, a lot of wealth, you know. And moving this bureaucracy takes a little time, you know, it becomes bureaucracy. But ILO is focusing their research, probing, and debate between the labor, employers, and government is something extraordinary. And the way they look into the various issues, like such the technological advancement, and the future work, and supply chains, and that's something extraordinary. Each organization has something, but it's not necessarily a resource, I would say. ILO has most of the UNO, except some few. But I think it's a linkage between the world politics, P5, and other G20 or G7, and the UN have to go together. ILO work as a member, they were invited to G20. So we advise, member, chair, we advise the chair, we, and not we anymore, but used to advise the chair how to incorporate, how to cope with jobless growth. India in 2007 and 2017, GDP growth 7 to 11%. It's a jobless growth, no job. And Australian G20, they were very serious about job creation as well. And I was very serious about job creation. So I would say it's addressing the key issues and then convince that P5 leaders, not only P5, G20, whether this is the agenda, and keep addressing it. You know, and we've been addressing the cases of Greece and Spain and Italy on European crisis, Lehman Brothers, 2008, and we said, hey, don't retreat, expand, and it took some years. I think this thing not that serious. After all, we are public servant. So that's, but of course we can be very critical public servant using media, people like you, and trying to say what we need to say.
Thank you very much.